right, all you creeps. I am sitting here with a legend among horror hosts. I am here with the outrageous Octavian Hallow, aka Mr. Frank Bay. How are you, sir?
I am doing groovy. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. So where can all the monster kids find Octavian?
Where else? At the Monster Channel. www.themonsterchannel.com.
Nice. And you have some things on YouTube as well.
Yeah, just bits and pieces. I try not to post anything more than like 3 or 4 minutes because, that's the good attention span for most people.
Hey, Biobags, you're here with your pal Octavian.
Where are you from?
I'm from New England my whole life. My parents were originally from down south, so there's kind of a language conflict growing up.
Right.
Between a Boston accent and a West Virginian accent, but yeah, my whole life I've been a Massachusetts kid, and now I live close to Boston, just outside of Boston.
So I have to ask this because of where you're from. Are you a Lovecraft fan?
Who isn't a Lovecraft?
Saturday, midnight. Or
Your earliest monster kid memory, your earliest monster related memory.
Wow. To tell you the truth, I I know some people say, "Oh, I've seen this movie or this and that." For me, speaking of West Virginia, where my parents were from, we used to go back and visit during this, during Labor Day week or whatever. I remember they had a cabin up in the woods. I remember going to this cabin and I was chased by a West Virginian witch when I was 5 years old.
Far out.
Yeah, well, it's not that exciting. It was just one of the locals dressed up as a witch and having fun
Okay.
with the Yanks from up north. But it left an impression on me, and it wasn't really a bad one. Of course, 5-year-old kids, they're going to scream, they're going to yell, but there's also that part in you that gets triggered. It's like the snap, like, this is actually kind of fun.
welcome back, my little owlets. Hope you are all enjoying tonight's feature.
Did you grow up with a horror host?
Actually, yeah. My horror host was Simon from Simon Sanctorum, and Gary Newton. He would do this amazing, like, Shakespearean type of character. He had this goblet called the elixir that he would do these things in every episode. And the way he did them, it wasn't pertained to the film, so you could pretty much place them with any film, which was kind of smart.
Right.
But he just had this great atmosphere about him, and it just I was the youngest of 5 kids, so we were all into this. So whether I wanted to be or not, I was doomed and destined to be a monster kid.
We've had this appointment for some time, Devoted.
He has had any influence on your character at all?
Oh yeah, I think he's influenced all of New England horror hosts, definitely. And there's definitely a grand respect that we all have for him still, and he's still the king, at least as far as this part neck of the woods.
Isn't that a monster kid thing? If you grew up with a horror host, he's the best to you for life, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's just like with anything else, like your first rock band, somehow that sets the bar. Of course, there'll be things that you like better and things you won't like as much, but there'll always be that'll be zero, and
Right.
the plus and negative will be everything else.
I thought it might be enchanting to take a moment to share some of the correspondences I have received through email. I just love getting email.
So what was your first rock band, if I may ask?
Beatles. And again, through no fault of my own, I was doomed because not only did my siblings, but my mom also loved the Beatles. And my dad was a straight out country, western, hillbilly music guy. And
Right.
rock and roll and the Beatles was nothing but a bunch of noise. So that made us kind of even love it even more, just because that natural rebellion against dad.
I warned you about making fun of my little friends that were in the feature. but
Mm-hmm.
Best Beatles album.
Oh, that's a loaded question, man.
It is. It is.
And you'd have to ask it like best Beatles album per, this mood or this category or this time, but all in general.
You can only have one.
Okay, if I was stuck on a desert island
Yep.
and it's like, okay, you can only grab one. Of course, the smart thing would be is to grab a double album.
Greatest hits.
Good point. But I was thinking more like one of the original, the White Album. I think I'd have to take the White Album.
Okay.
As much as I love, especially everything from Revolver on, even a little bit more. I mean, I dig the early stuff, but I love when they, started getting a little crazy.
First Monster Kid movie.
Oh, all right. See, growing up in the Boston area, we had Channel 56, which was Creature Double Feature. And of course, I was always tuned in from like 1 p.m. to, 5 p.m. or maybe 4 p.m. I think there were like 90-minute episodes, but there were 2 of them. That was on every Saturday, especially on this time of year when you're stuck in the house anyway.
Right.
But the earliest one I remember that really, really grabbed me was War of the Gargantuas.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. In that category. With the horror stuff, I swear it had to have been like Hammer. And something I really even couldn't put my name on, a tag on which one, but definitely just the Hammer movies just kind of creeped me out a bit as a kid, but it wasn't a bad thing.
You grew up with a horror host. You're a horror host now.
Yeah.
How has it changed over the years?
Oh, well, I think now it's a lot accessible. Back then, horror hosts were just, at least you had one almost in every major city that you could count on, especially in Ohio. They're all over the place. They're always. I think that's the heart of horror hosts where it all pretty much centers. Not knocking any of the region is fantastic horror hosts throughout the whole country and beyond. But I think with the streaming and things like that, where more and more people are able to do it, which is great, and that's fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic for me. It's the same deal. It was like an opportunity to finally be able to find an outlet to, to release some of that artistic energy, especially when you didn't have the opportunity to do other things that you enjoy, like sports or especially with the pandemic.
Right.
I would imagine there's a ton more horror hosts being spawned in this dark times.
Right.
And I think that's changed. I kind of miss where you had to really, really search for your horror host. And it was more of a achievement and a treat when you could sit and watch, and especially if it was in the late night.
Yes.
Now it's like streaming on demand. It's like people take that for granted, like they do with any other media.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
perhaps instead of anticipating the probable, my scarapist, Helen, says it would be better to get into the groove.
How long have you been a horror host?
I released my first episode the weekend before Halloween of 2015. I believe it was 2015.
So you're a seasoned veteran.
And I was in pre-production, probably a year and a half before that, and that's, the time of coming up with the idea, concept, character look. It's kind of funny with Octavian. He was like the very last detail of this whole thing. And it was like do or die, or flight or die, or whatever you call all that expression, fight or flight. I didn't really have the voice down or the look. It wasn't until I was scheduled to record in the cable access in the town that I've started in Attleboro, Massachusetts at the time, AACS. I had no idea what he was going to sound like, and the look was kind of like, I just had to go with what I had at the moment and just dove in there. And then as soon as the camera went, the voice came out, and that was it. He never had a voice before then. He was always like a silent. I mean, his mouth was stitched shut. He didn't talk.
I thought I had a sucky gig.
What was your first show like? Were you nervous?
Oh God. yeah, I was nervous releasing it, and I was like on the wire, and I hadn't even I don't think I had even had edited or filmed the Octavian part yet, and I did a voiceover thing, and the voiceover thing was kind of close. It was like I did like a commercial promo. It sounds more like Batman than Octavian. I forget how it goes, but I've only heard it a million times and I can't remember it. But but it was a little nerve wracking, but it was exciting having it, even though it was cable access and knowing there was probably maybe 5 people watching it if I was lucky. And for
Right.
5 minutes max, maybe they have it up in a pub somewhere and cool, and maybe people like, oh, cool, check it out.
Right.
That'll be my audience. Sure, I'll take that.
You're right.
What advice would you give to somebody who thinks, I want to try to do this myself?
Okay, it's like that. You'd have to like sit down and think. Do I really want to give birth to this probably very ugly child?
Right.
And am I going to have the patience, as if having like a real baby, like actually planning a planned parenthood, because that's kind of what it is. And if you're at the point where you're saying, yeah, I can afford that, I can afford sleepless nights, I can afford like being broke a lot of times and not really getting any payback in return, I can, also afford to put up a lot of crap,
Right.
via diaper or through life. Then if you're cool with that, then I say, yeah, go for it, because it's like the same thing. It's a commitment. But the only good thing about it is, unlike an ugly kid, if you get bored with it, you can just walk away and nobody cares. Forget about it, and it's still floating around there. You can't do that with a real kid.
Hallowed evening, my little owlets. It's me, your buddy Octavian Hallow from Haven Falls Horror Fix.
Scares Frank Bay.
Oh, that's a tricky one. Wow. Oh, you leave. I'm gonna get you for that one. What scares Frank Bay? Everything now. Believe it or not, the unknown, the paranormal. I mean, it sounds crazy because it's like, well, then why the hell are you doing ghost hunting?
That was going to be my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a way of dealing, confronting your fears, and the more you, hopefully, and I know the more I learn and experience stuff, the less fearful I am of it. But ever having to deal with anything, I mean, I don't know what you or anybody else feels or believes in as far as what's beyond us, as far as supernatural and other existence of beings, spirits, demons, whatever. That unknown is what really, really scares me. And instead of running and hiding it from it, I just feel I have to try to educate myself. So if I'm ever am confronted with it, I have a little bit of knowledge in my tool belt to deal with it, or at least know where to go. Who are you gonna call?
Hey, Scoop. I just happened to be floating in your neck of the woods in time. And I was wondering, gee, I bet my buddy Scoop / Cooper would just love to help me experiment on this little witchcraft spell I've conjured up. What do you say, buds?
I'm an extreme skeptic, and I have to be, because in most cases, I really, and that's one thing that helps with doing a horror host and knowing how to do effects and stuff like that. If somebody tries to pull a fast one on you or something like that, you can identify it. It's happened recently. It's like, yeah, I know that technique. They did this. They're trying to like just whatever.
Right.
But oh geez, again, my train of thought.
If there's been anything that you can't explain away.
Oh yeah. I'm not a medium, but the old team I was with, called Attleboro Paranormal Investigators, a bunch of great people. That's where I met Cody Ray Despians, he's like on Taps and Ghost Hunters and all this other stuff.
Right.
But when he was a young lad, he was pretty much the brain behind this whole thing. But our base of operations was actually in this machine warehouse, this big building right in the center of Attleboro. and it was had all supposedly all kind of activity. There's people from Ghost Hunters that came through. Brian Hanois and some other guy, they came through, and they're like, they said this is like Disney World. In this area you got this kind of activity. In this area you have just general haunting. Over here you got demonic activity. It's like, geez.
Wow.
But we did a thorough investigation once. Like, we really clamped down, and I was traveling. I was a cameraman. I was running a camera, and I was with a medium, and she was telling me, but there was things right up face to face to me, threatening me and stuff like that. But I didn't feel and pick up a vibe on anything, so of course I wasn't afraid. But just thinking that that's possible. But I've never had a negative contact. I've never had. I've been touched. I've heard voices. I've definitely been touched. But as far as this, I've never had a negative experience with anything the supernatural.
The truth, I have gone onto Stitch Facebook Media and hit the go live button, but nothing happened. I'm still dead.
Hell House or whatever, when that woman on the on the skateboard, popped up behind that woman, he's like, ah.
House on Haunted Hill.
Yes.
Oh, good Lord. Yes, that was, we had a laugh with that, because it's like, why is she rolling?
I know. And she's like, too much Viagra. My whole body's stiff.
That's the Alice Cooper song. And it spans all of his eras and little incarnations.
Oh my God. That's another one, because, and I wasn't always a diehard Alice Cooper fan. I mean, I always was aware from a young age, but not his music so much as image.
Right.
Played into that horror, first impression stuff. But when I started to appreciate him music wise and really understand, like, wow, he has the best musicians around him. He's a serious musician, and he still has fun. Ballad of Dwight Fry. I love that one. It just paints a picture, and again, that falls into that whole Hammer, that whole atmosphere of horror that I just love.
For the Monster Kids, can you sort of walk us through the Monster Channel universe?
The Monster Channel universe. Well, the way I envisioned it and portrayed it in my last Halloween episode.
That's what I'm referencing.
Yeah. Especially during these times when people got to be safe and you got to do safety checks and stuff like that. Hey, that goes for the undead too.
Right.
As long as they're still producing and entertaining, they count. In the Haunted Theater in Virginia, USA, resided by Halloween Jack and Halloween Jacqueline and Little Rascal Jack, there is the Hall of Horror Hosts, which is like this void realm. Maybe something like out of Doctor Strange or something like that. But it's where all these orbs are connected, where Halloween Jack could go. He tries not to. He respects people's privacy, but could go to view and check in on everybody and make sure everybody's cool and copacetic. Right. And Octavian recently had the chance to sneak in there and rattle a few cages.
That episode was gold, by the way.
Oh, that was so much fun.
It was absolute gold.
And I mean, horror hosting can be such a lonely process sometimes, especially when like you're the only one that's doing it, right. Doing it and producing, which is usually the case. I'm usually starving to grab people to please do something or even send things in. It's like, yes, please. Right. But when doing something like that, it's not so lonely because you're collaborating with all these people and they're just, the first time around, it was kind of like pulling teeth, and I was still new to them and stuff like that. I'm like, we don't know what this guy's gonna do. Right. But I don't know. I think the second time, over time, they're like, yeah, okay, cool, and everybody sent me everything in a timely manner and beautifully done. Everybody just sent in this beautiful stuff, and it's tough when you throw a script at somebody and say, hey, try to get close to that. You improvise, right. as some did, and I loved it, and then just taking this hot mess and just like creating a monster, a real monster out of it,
Right. But it was cool because you gave structure to this. I liken it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh,
It's,
thanks,
it's
man.
like you gave structure to the Monster Channel universe.
Yeah, that's kind of how that Hall of Horror host is, I think.
Right,
Anything can land in there, and you can make contact and maybe pull something out and
right,
drag it into your own. And that was kind of like the whole thing with Octavian being on a time clock. And it's like, hey, by midnight, dude, your time's up. You know that
right.
witch's spell is expiring, uh, that he didn't even know about, and the Bone Jangler trying to help him and steer him along the way and hopping and yeah, it's kind of slapstick and silly at the end, but it's what else is there to tell? I mean, the whole thing is like spending time with those horror hosts
Yes,
and having them do their own little thing first and then pop in the middle of that,
right.
knowing that hey, this is a universe. They got stuff going on too, and
Would Octavian's final thoughts be for all the monster kids?
oh boy, final thoughts. Oh, just just chill, relax. Don't get so uptight with each other. It's a rough ride for everybody. And don't be so uptight. Don't be afraid to laugh at each other, but also don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. And just keep it real, be cool. If you got a dream, it's reachable, reach for it. If it seems so far to reach, take baby steps. Maybe you'll get closer someday until you can grab it. And until your next scare, a nightmare.
Till your next scare, a nightmare.